So day one, start building your website. Actually, I know it's doesn't necessarily feel intuitive, and it's definitely not as exciting as starting to build your coffee cart, but you need to go get your domain. You need to start building your website. My preferred website builder is Squarespace, I think. It's what I use. It's just really user friendly, easy to get a great looking design. The reason for that is because Google is going to sandbox your domain for some amount of time. Google's reputation depends on, showing trustworthy results. And so if a random website pops up today and is suddenly instantly on the top of Google results, that could be actually very dangerous for Google's reputation. So the first thing you do, regardless of what service business, what you're trying to do, go buy your domain, start working on your website. So I also recommend having keywords in your website. So it should be, let's say, Aspen Coffee Catering or whatever. Like ideally if you think you will never ever expand to other cities than the main metro area you're in, then you probably could use like the main metro area city name in your domain. But if you do think you may expand to other areas, then you'll want something with coffee catering. So business name coffeecatering.com. That's your domain. You start building your website, make it a 5-page website at most. Just start simple.
One more thing on domain, Justin, just to jump in here real quick. A pro tip for the growth hackers out there. Like Justin said, starting to age your domain will help you with Google. There's a hack here, which is you can buy an aged domain.
That's true.
So, it may or may not always make sense if you really set on a certain business name for your card, or you really have a particular one you're attached to. But if you're not, you can buy an expiring aged domain to get a head start on your SEO and your ranking. So one of my buddies, shout out to David Nix, he has a website, yournextdomain.com. You can just go to GoDaddy auctions or whatever, but you can constantly find pre-aged domains that people are letting lapse that have the word coffee in them, and buy one that already has backlinks and stuff like that if you really want to turbo boost your climb up the Google ranks.
Yeah, very
Like a
true.
fine wine, fine aged.
Exactly.
Exactly true.
It's like buying an old bottle of Pappy Van Winkle versus going and buying some bottom shelf and trying to age it in your own cellar.
Yeah. Yeah, very true. That being said, though, like the aging process doesn't necessarily take forever, at least in coffee catering, it doesn't necessarily take forever, and you can see new domains start to rank, but it will be faster for sure if you buy an aged domain. So day one, you want to start coffee catering business, buy your domain, your business name, coffeecatering.com, build it on Squarespace, make it a 5-page website. You want your homepage talking about your services and where you're located. You want a menu, gallery, pricing tabs, and a contact tab. And that's basically it, like a 5-page website. And then now you do need photos, I will say. So get that stuff live, get your keywords out there, build your website. That's such a great question. Culture is something that as you grow, you have to think about a lot more. All companies have culture. It's just like the air we breathe almost, and it's hard to change it once you're on this like cultural trajectory. I do want to kind of preface all this by saying that so often, and it's totally okay, and this is probably good, the culture that any company has is oftentimes birthed out of the personality of the founder, right? If you look at, of course, all the great companies, the trillion-dollar companies or large famous companies, right? Amazon, Apple, Tesla, whatever it is, like all those companies have very unique and individual cultures that I think started with the founder and was built from there. So of course, in a more humble way, like all the great events businesses and all the great coffee catering companies that are out there right now, we all have very different and unique cultures, and those cultures are largely a reflection of that started out of the personal traits of those business owners. Whether it's, honestly, Michael at Creature has an incredible culture. It's all his own. Corbin at Night Owl, incredible culture, all his own. Good Heart Coffee. I would say we have a high performing culture and great baristas. It's all our own. It's all our own flavor. So I do want to preface that by the things we're going to share today. I hope you get good insight from, but especially as small business owners, culture starts and is you, especially at the beginning. And so I think when you're really small and just have a few baristas, your personal care, empathy, and charisma are maybe at least in my experience, some of the most powerful driving forces of the little baby seeds of your culture that will grow over time. And that's what I learned. And we all have the privilege of growing culture a little more slowly when it's our first location, right? And we're there and we're involved and we know every single staff member by name and we know about their lives, and maybe we have some time and we sit with them before or after events and just, learn about how'd the event go, how's that, natural, life details emerge. And that is an incredible way to start building some, rapport, empathy, trust with your staff. Those early, small, humble seeds, to me, are critical elements of culture when you're starting small and just starting out. And as you grow, how you create culture changes a lot. I think it gets a lot harder, but that, in my mind, is kind of how I, in hindsight, what I was doing. I didn't realize I was doing it at the time, but in hindsight, that's what I was doing to set, I think, an early path for solid culture.
Maybe some words of encouragement if people are feeling some slowness right now.
Yeah, for sure. What to do during the slow season is definitely tough. And when you're first starting your business, maybe you've heard from other people when the slow season will be for your industry. Maybe you haven't, and maybe you have no idea. So I think that was the case for me. I had no idea when the slow season was, or I was just so heads down in the trenches and in the chaos that I was just like, I didn't even pay attention really to these seasonal cycles. It wasn't even on my radar. I had so many fires to put out that like seasonal ups and downs just didn't even register. But finally, a few years ago, it started to be like, okay, I need to start like tracking my event volumes and see when the busy periods and slow periods are so that I can see if we've grown year over year. And so I think maybe in like 2022 or 2023, coming off of an insane December, just mind blowing to us. I think, at that time it was like we had done over 100, or I forget, 100, 120 events and just flying high. And if maybe you can relate to this as a small business owner, as an event business owner, when you are in the busy season, you're stressed, of course, but you feel like a freaking genius, right? You've got so many events. Like, I'm so smart and good looking, and I have all these events, and the money's flowing, and the good times are rolling. And yeah, I'm working hard and I'm stressed, but man, I've done it. I've made it. Like, I'm so good at what I do. And then the inevitable seasonal slowdown comes, and you start to feel real sad, and you start to think, you know what? I know nothing. I'm so dumb. Why did I ever think I was good at this? I'm so sad. Like, where's my next booking? And I just want to normalize that for you. That's totally okay, because obviously there's things like seasonal slowdowns that are beyond our control. Doesn't mean they feel good, but it's okay. It happens. And if you're in the coffee catering industry, and also this completely it can vary by geography as well as industry. So, wedding people are completely slammed, regardless of maybe your photo booth or mobile bar or mobile ice cream caterer. You're probably going to be completely slammed in the summer and dead in the winter. But for coffee, in most of the cities that we operate, typically we are busy in the spring and busy through the fall. And we have this really slow period. Like July is painfully slow for us. And January wasn't this year, but in the past has been kind of painfully slow. And so what do you do? What do you do when you're feeling sad about the lack of business and you want to make good use of that time? And so I think for me, that's where, and we'll cover a few different segments on this podcast. We want to touch on things like, what sort of projects and, systems and organizations that we want to cover that can then feed into your success when the next busy season comes. And I think that all begins with reflecting on the last one and taking a second, taking it all in. Okay, what went well? Where can we improve based on all of the wins and challenges of the last busy season? So I'll leave it off there. I'll let Zach jump in just a little bit, and we'll circle back on some of those specific areas and projects and what those are here shortly.
For mid-tier, I was thinking like branching beyond just talking to an LLM to use other AI applications or tools, within your business. So we talked a lot about chat-based, for example, on the last episode. Go back and listen to that if you want to, in a few clicks, train a support agent that can talk to your customers on your website and answer frequent questions and things like that. That's a pretty easy thing to do these days. Another one that comes to mind for me is video and image generation, which maybe is more esoteric or not as many people have messed with, but it's getting really good. Like for those who are paying attention to this space, tools like VO for video and Midjourney for images, ChatGPT for images, you can generate some remarkable content that you can use for advertising collateral or brand collateral, marketing collateral. If you just want to generate imagery that matches your vibe and use it in your emails or for blog posts or other stuff on your website, or what some people are doing in the extreme these days is actually generating ads that have a person that looks like they're talking and it's not even a real person. You can literally prompt like an AI to generate like a TikTok reel for you that looks like someone's talking about something and then promote it on Instagram and TikTok and things like that. So if generating imagery or visual content is at all part of your strategy or your marketing strategy, I think you should be thinking about using AI for some of that.
Yeah. Yeah, this episode really is for your staff, right? If you're a business owner or you're the operations manager, this episode hopefully is one that you can send to your team that will just give them a little bit of perspective and insight into how they can better navigate some of these challenges. And there are some pretty significant challenges when you're walking into these different event venues. So first thing is that actually it's up to the business owner or the operations manager to set the stage and set the right tone with the client who booked and or the site contact person. Sometimes those are the same person, sometimes those are different people. But when you book an event, you've got to have that site contact person. And I think just setting your team up for success as the business owner by sending out confirmations, like maybe a 1-week confirmation, a 24-hour confirmation, just confirming, hey, here's who we have as a site contact, here's the parking and loading information. And it's kind of up to you as the business owner to catch any gaps in the information they've provided between parking and loading or otherwise instructions to get to the service location at the venue. Once you've done that, that fits perfectly on, I've got to plug it, the Flashquotes event brief, right? The event brief is the document that does all this and really sets up the staff for success at the venue. So they would have, all their checklists and timelines and exactly when they need to be where, when they should depart your headquarters, when they should arrive on site, who to call when they get there. So Flashquotes does make it really easy and builds that structure in for both the on-site service staff as well as the business owner or operations manager. You can link to maps of the venue and all that stuff. But as a barista or photo booth operator or ice cream person, what should you do? What are best practices for you if you're, the business owner, operations manager has already done all that? Number one for us is our baristas at Good Heart Coffee, we ask them all to text the site contact person right when they're leaving the headquarters, introduce themselves, make that connection, and give them the most updated ETA. Hopefully you're on time, but that simple thing gives people so much comfort. And that is actually, in my opinion, the umbrella of what we're doing here when we have the challenge of transporting all this equipment and then setting it up and navigating sometimes complex event venues. In my opinion, the entire purpose of how we interact with on-site site contacts or the people who booked you is just helping them feel comfortable that like, hey, we've got this. Here's where we are in the process. We're on the way. The worst challenges we've ever had is just, the baristas don't text, they don't reach out to the site contact and leave them in the dark. And that creates a lot of stress for those people. And so that's just number one. Be very communicative. Hopefully your business owner or operations manager has already connected and shared your contact information with the site contact person. But if they don't, shoot them a text. Hey, this is Justin from Good Heart Coffee. I should be there at this time. We'll see you soon. That goes so far. And that to me is kind of step one of how to set the tone, because then they're expecting you. They will be there. They will likely, hopefully, be out there waiting for you, instead of that awkward thing where like they didn't know you were coming and they're like deep inside this complex venue and takes them like 10 minutes to meet you when you do finally arrive, and then now you're behind. So that's step one.
Justin, you've learned all these lessons the hard way, and Good Heart Coffee has served what in a lifetime, what, like 10,000 plus events maybe, or something crazy.
Probably. Yeah.
Early years, it was just you on the front lines. Now you have a large team doing this work. But I wonder if you could share a couple war stories, maybe especially for the people who are just starting out and haven't, don't have a large volume of events under their belt. Like, share some difficult situations that you ran into, like on site or dealing with a client or a site contact, what you learned from it, and maybe, how you handled those situations, or how you teach your team to handle them. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd have to think of what some of them are, but I know a very common one is just the disconnect that happens when the person who booked the event and the person who is on site meeting you as a barista or staff is different. Because if they're different, then that site contact person may not have seen all the information that the person who booked has seen. And so that's the biggest thing we notice is, okay, yeah, this person booked. The person who booked knows how much power and space and setup and all that stuff you need. They know the requirements, but may not have communicated them to the on-site contact. And so that disconnect is one of the most awkward things, because at least in coffee catering, you show up, oh, hey, yeah, we need this much space, we need an outlet nearby, we need this much power. And sometimes it comes as a complete shock to the site contact person, and they're, maybe they're a little bit just flustered by that. They didn't expect it. Now they have to move a table, or they're running around dealing with maybe other vendors or things like that. And so actually, I think this conversation naturally starts to move into the different personas of site contact people, because there are a few different personas of the people who will meet you on site. And if it's the best experience you can have, most likely is when the person who booked the event is the person who meets you on site as the barista or, caterer or, event person, because they know everything, they've seen everything, they've seen all the requirements, and they're likely kind of the head honcho in that scenario. And it's likely to be also a smaller event in that case, and so everything will be a little smoother, and there's been less like back and forth communication, less opportunities for the ball to have been dropped, as information moves between different people. To me, the really critical things are, what grinder are you going to use? What espresso machine are you going to use? I believe you must have a pitcher rinser on your coffee cart just for like bar flow efficiency. So then what like pump and accumulator are you going to use? I know a lot of people recommend like the ones from Cafe Works. There's a few. So Simple Carts does like their hub system, little pricier. Cafe Works does like a little more affordable accumulator tank and water pump that would be ready to go to plumb in your pitcher rinser, your machine, and all that. So those are kind of the most accessible, done for you plumbing things. And plumbing is one of the most, in my opinion, intimidating and confusing parts of starting a coffee cart when you're actually building out the coffee cart. I know it was for me. Like, I have entire graveyards of weird plumbing parts I purchased thinking, trying to accomplish some plumbing tasks that ended up being wrong. So yeah, you choose your machine, choose your grinder, get your water pump and accumulator tank, get a pitcher rinser. Those are kind of like the skeleton of your coffee cart. And I know it sounds funny, but choosing your cooler is really important too. A lot of people do like the really nice like Yeti coolers, and those can be good. They can be really heavy as well. Like rotomolded coolers are really heavy. My favorite brand actually is Rugged Road. They are super, super light. They're about the similar price to a Yeti, but like half the price. I think they're half the weight. So they might be like 12 pounds for like a 65 quart cooler that can carry like 4 gallons of whole milk, a few quarts of oat, almond, half and half, some ice in there. And they're just super light. And that means that instead of that cooler loaded up weighing, it's going to weigh 40 pounds instead of 50, or maybe even more. So that extra like 20% weight savings, or really 50% weight on just the cooler, but 20% on the overall load of the cooler can be really, really nice. So those are kind of the big things. All the small accessories are a little bit just more, nuance and preference. What portafilter. If you want to get a custom portafilter, or your milk pitchers, your shot glasses, your barware, your mats, your bar mats, things like that are all subject to more personal preference, and they're pretty small purchases between, like, 15 to maybe $15 to $75. The thing that I actually, especially for mobile coffee caterers, I think about a lot more is the tampers. I am a huge fan of force calibrated auto leveling tampers, especially when you're trying to crank through a huge line of people in a mobile environment. These tampers will make sure that your tamping level, you're tamping at the right pressure, your shots could be super consistent. And that's where I feel like that's like puck prep and tamping is where a lot can go wrong in coffee, or when you're making shots of espresso. So I love, like, Happy Tamper or the Normcore Tamper are kind of our preferences, although there are other brands out there. So those are kind of the core pillars, in my opinion, of the coffee cart setup. And then all the other stuff is just kind of small accessories.
Yeah, AI is one of the most valuable skills that business owners can learn in 2025 and for the foreseeable future. So if you disagree with that, hopefully I can convince you otherwise right now. And you should go back and listen to we did a dedicated pod on AI early on and gave some examples of stuff that you can implement in your business as an event business owner. But even since then, there's tons of new stuff. I've learned so much since then. It's just changing at an amazingly rapid pace. So I'll throw out a couple of ideas for people to brush up on practical use cases for AI this summer if you have some spare time. So maybe I'll do like novice, intermediate, and like advanced ideas, right? If you're a novice, you just need to start talking to ChatGPT or one of these LLMs. That's the very basic solution for you. ChatGPT is great. Claude by Anthropic is also great, and maybe a little bit better for some things that are relevant to coffee, like copywriting and for your website, copywriting for cold emails and things like that. Claude still tends to be the best model on the market for creative writing and things like that. So pick one of those two. I think both have a free tier, and then the pro tier is like $20 a month or something. It's a very nominal expense to just get an account and ask it questions. So some things you could ask it for that are very practical right now. Give it a link to your website and say, give it a prompt like, "You are an expert conversion copywriter. Please do an audit of the HTML of my landing page to tell me how I could improve the language, the persuasiveness, and the call to actions on my website to get more leads and get more traffic." And AI will give you a beautifully thoughtful teardown of how your copy is not as good as it could be, and where you could just change a few words here or there, or change the button text here or there, and see a lift in your like an improvement in your bounce rate and your leads that land on your website. That's a no-brainer. Everyone listening to this podcast should do that right now. It takes literally 10 minutes, and you can go fix your copy and potentially get a measurable boost in your leads to your website. So that's maybe a low-hanging fruit one. But any other like simple ideas you guys have for like just basic just like kicking the tires when in chatting with an LLM, things that could be useful for the audience?
I think that's a great one. Sorry, Daniel, just real quick. That's an incredible one. The one addition or enrichment there is that you need to tell it more about your brand and what you're trying to achieve, and the tone and the vibe, right? Because the more context you can feed into this stuff, the better the outputs are going to be. And I know Zach, and I think all of us do this. We'll use sometimes like a voice dictation tool on our computer or phone, and just almost like free flow talk into ChatGPT with all the ideas and all the context and all of what we're trying to achieve. Because the more context that these AI tools have, the better the output. So if you're just super vague and one sentence prompt, it's the quality is not going to be what you want it to be. So feed it like a free form association using voice dictation of all that you're hoping to accomplish, and tone and vibe and everything about your business, and then prompt it, and you're likely to get a better output. Sorry to interrupt, Daniel. Go ahead.
No, that's great. Just on that app, that's Whisper Flow that we use, and it's just a really wonderful application. I think the most exceptional thing about it is the way it just layers onto everything. Like literally, you press a hotkey to talk, and then when you're done talking, it'll just paste that text kind of synthesized already into a chat window. I think what I was going to say for if we're talking about novices, like you have little to no experience with these tools, one thing that's really wonderful, and some of the kids these days, they say, are using it for, therapy. So if you're feeling down about the slow time, I say that somewhat in jest, but what I would suggest is get ChatGPT, pay for $20 just for the month to get the best voice, turn it on audio mode and have a conversation, because a part of the unlock mentally is what you will find more often than not is the answers you receive will be really substantive and quality and blow you away. And you'll be able to talk and have follow-up question after question after question about your business, what your struggles are, where it's going well. Zach goes on walks and talks to AI, while he walks around the block. I had a chat last night, I was sitting outside and just talking with it's actually pretty amazing. And that is like a really important mind expanding activity to realize like, okay, like there's a lot here, because it's easy to dismiss it. It's easy to sort of make it like it's going to be the Matrix and you're going to be in a pod getting the life sucked out of you because computers are in the world. It's really, to me, it's you find yourself in a really amazing middle ground where it's like, I see how I, as a person and human, can leverage this insane tool to do like wonderful things. And I've got this amazing, it's like a superpower, and just talking to it, I think will illuminate that for you.
Your pivot that increased your profitability and your revenue a ton, was that pricing shift the main driver? Or was there any other tips or tricks that you implemented that kind of helped you achieve that record year?
No, that was the main driver, because then that was affecting everything, right? I would get the inquiry, I would get the lead, and then I wouldn't respond right away because I didn't know what to respond. I know. So from the beginning, our response time has been like 30 minutes. I always tell people when people ask, well, how many hours do you work? I'm like, if you're looking for balance when you're launching a business, this is not it. If you're looking for like the 9 to 5 structure and I get these breaks and I get this lunchtime and I get this paid time off, this is not for you. Because my personality is very much like, I'm like tunnel vision. So if I'm up at midnight responding to a client, I'm up at midnight responding to a client, and it's perfectly normal to me. And I know it's not normal, but it is for me,
Yeah.
So 30 minutes, and I took care of all sales aspect of our business. I took care of it. I still kind of do. I'm starting to let go, but just understanding, being able to reply to those big leads right away, just literally lead, communication, get paid. Because most of these people are in a hurry to get a vendor booked because it is such a big event. And to have the vendor who's like, oh yeah, I can do that. Like we do that all the time. It just gives them that confidence and they feel secure. Like, all right, it's one less part of our business of the event that we have to worry about.
I heard somebody say, like, there's a really fundamental difference between going into a job and feeling like what I'm going to do today is going to benefit the business. Like if I do good work, it's going to benefit me personally. It's going to benefit the organization, and I'm going to get this reciprocal, healthy, positive outcome, right? Versus a feeling of I'm working at this company, I can do all the right things, I can follow all these rules, and I just feel like it's extractive. Like the business is just trying to extract value from me, and I'm just a widget or a number. And when you're in that sort of environment, oftentimes it's that environment where people start doing the really cheesy cultural things like, hey, let's all get on and play, an escape game online because we're all remote. And it reeks of inauthenticity, and it just falls totally flat. It's almost worse than not trying at all, frankly.
Totally.
If you're going to try and you're going to have this real underlying current of, I'm actually not going to win here. I'm not going to grow. I'm not going to make more money for me and my family. To me, that is a really, really stark sign of a positive or negative culture. And people know that, right? Fundamentally, like you could ask me or anybody who's worked at jobs, like it doesn't take very long for you to catch on, like, okay, this is going to be extractive, or this is really a positive reciprocal relationship with the business.
And it can come from a good intentioned place, but fall so flat if you fail to follow through on it and execute on it. Like you're saying, Daniel, like one funny story from my prior life is a tech startup I was working at was trying really hard to, it didn't have a good culture. People weren't happy. There was a lot of kind of, you just know when you work at a place like that, like it kind of feels icky and no one's happy. And what are we even doing here? And what makes this company different or a good place to work? And there's kind of general unhappiness in HR satisfaction polls and stuff like that. So the HR and the marketing team got together and said, we need to instill a culture. I know what we'll do. We'll come up with our core values, and they're all like cliche core values: integrity, excellence, communication. And then they printed those in like giant, like font, like black Arial font. And they literally plastered them like across the wall. Like there was like a big white wall in front of all of our cubicles. And they just like got like, giant 10,000 size font stickers that said integrity, excellence, culture, or communication. And like, that would be right in front of our faces while we were sitting at our cubicles in like black and white font. And it was like, it caused like the exact opposite of what they wanted. It made everyone roll their eyes. Everyone would be like, oh my God, this company has garbage culture. They don't actually believe in excellence or communication or integrity. They just made up some nice sounding words. They don't do anything to like follow through on those values. They're just trying to shove like synthetic culture down our throats, and we're spitting it back out. Maybe that kind of leads to, I know both of you guys had some examples of like extreme cultures and how to actually implement like your core values or show your values in a business. And not just like, and actually walk the walk and not just talk the talk.
Well, one in the case of, or a couple in the case of really what Justin was talking about, right? Like your core values or your culture is going to spring out of you as a founder. And sometimes these businesses live so long that they become manager owned. And I think it's kind of hard once the founder's gone and you've just got this management class that's just kind of maintaining what existed. But there's some pretty cool stories about founders and how they've established cultures. So, for example, in the early days, and even to today, if you go work at Amazon, you're going to walk in, you're going to try and find your space as an employee, and they're going to sit you down at a desk. And that desk is made of a door sitting on top of originally like two kind of basic stands, and it's got your computer, monitor, everything set up. And you're just there at a desk. You got no privacy, you got no doors, no fancy up and down desk or anything like that. And you're there to work. And Bezos thought this was super, super important because it was a message to his team and his employees to say, look, we're here to do amazing work, but our customer is number one. Actually, our customer is even before us. It was a sign of self-sacrifice and saying, we're not going to spend as much on desks so that we can keep shipping free if you're Prime. We can keep prices as low as possible so that when people come shop with us, they have an amazing and affordable experience and our product really sings. Another one was the A16Z and Ben Horowitz. They're a company that focuses on investing, an investment firm, a venture capitalist, and they required for any of their VC employees that were working with founders of some of the companies in their portfolio, they were noticing that people just weren't respecting the time of these CEOs and founders and decided to do something pretty extreme. They started charging $10 for every minute that the VCs were late to these meetings with these founders. And, it wasn't so much about the money at all. It's about the signal to say, hey, we're going to do something extreme and we're going to put a stake in the sand and say, hey, we really value the time of these founders. They're critical to our business and we need to respect their time. So I think like there's so many cool examples of business owners and founders really setting a precedent, and those things become a part of the cultural story. And it kind of asks the question, like, this story in and of itself talks about how we operate and what we do as a business. So I think those are really cool.
But it wasn't until we were like, hey, we need to redesign the catering page. We need to add location pages. And as soon as we were able to launch all of that and put Flashquotes front and center, I mean, they were getting a lot of leads. Like they're pretty well known. That's how they started around here. So they were getting one per day. And I think, Riley said within a few weeks, it may have even been 1 or 2 weeks, they were getting 5 leads per day. And so that is just a huge jump. And, like you have to sort out the leads that aren't qualified and whatnot. So having that sort of jump was just massive for them. And really, they were able to purchase a new car right away. They have a new person manning the entire catering operation now and overseeing that, which is just huge. So I get to talk with him all the time. And now I just talked with him last night. He was in here setting up while I was, working away on some stuff. And he's like, I'm setting up my team. I'm like training people under me. So I'm just, in a matter of no time, they've been able to really take catering from kind of this, if it comes in, it's great. It kind of helps our brand, keeps us connected to, some corporations, to a real pillar of their business. And one of the things about catering, which I don't think many people realize, is the compounding effect that it has when you get to set up at some of these events, because people pay to go to events for networking. And so when you're there as a new business with a fresh face, whether you're brand new, just starting your catering business, or you're like Valor, the reason they got into their original cafe, I don't know if you know this, is from a catering event. They did an event. They met somebody who knew somebody who wanted to invest in a cafe, and like they talked, and that's how they got their first space. So they connected with this business mentor, help them get their first cafe space, initial loan in the business. And so catering just has this huge effect just beyond the transactional part. I have another friend, and he's out of LA, and he offered catering, and this is years ago, but he's done so many A-list events and now has this huge network of people who write for all of the major publications across the US. And whenever he's launching something new, they're his friends who he's personally served at these events. And he gets free press and free people hyping up his business. And it's just like, it's hard to even explain the effects that offering this type of thing gives people. And so I encourage all cafes, if they have the bandwidth, set up a catering operation. And I encourage all catering operations who are just getting started, make sure you're positioning yourself for these high-end events as well. Don't just, go out there saying, hey, look, we can do a pop-up at, your sporting event or your farmer's market. Those are fine, but like have a section of your site that shows a case study that you can do something really exclusive, high-end, some custom branding, whatnot, because it's a real unlock. And so hopefully we can help people like see that vision and steer their business in that direction. I'm sure, Justin, you've seen that firsthand.
I have seen a small minority of people generate meaningful leads on Instagram. But yeah, I am a believer that Instagram is primarily for vanity and Google is for sanity. Yeah, service businesses die through obscurity. I feel actually, that sounds extreme. I feel even stronger, and I'll speak it in a stronger way than even Kent. And he's in his business is an SEO agency. Like, we see so many people with so many beautiful carts, amazing services, delicious drinks, and they think, whether it's in bar or coffee catering, they think their handmade rose pistachio syrups are their differentiator. They're not. Like, I know it's delicious and amazing, but maybe 0.5% of people actually hired you because of your syrups. I used to think that. I used to use the best coffee roaster and how to make the syrups, and I'm like, oh, for sure. Obviously, everyone's going to hire me because I use Sweet Bloom coffee roasters. None of that's true. They don't care. In the vast majority of cases, they don't care what brand your espresso machine is. They don't care what syrups you have. They don't care who your coffee is. Primarily, they just don't even know you exist. They can't find you. You've put so much work in this. You've invested, $10,000 to $20,000 or more in your events businesses for the equipment and systems and all of this stuff. Whether, again, your photo booth, coffee cart, mobile bar, and you poured so much love into it. And if you don't get found, you're going to probably go out of business in 2 years or less. You'll just eventually you're going to burn out, you're going to feel frustrated. And when you put so much love into something only to see it flounder, like that's very, very discouraging. It's very hard on you emotionally. And just to take that extra leap and say, okay, I am going to now invest. I know for so many business owners, that's not the fun, sexy part of it. Like actually, maybe for some of you, I hope not, but for some of you, maybe even your eyes glazed over at certain parts of this conversation just because you don't care about the technical stuff like this, and you get more personal satisfaction out of your beautiful Instagram and your photos and your amazing cart and your delicious syrups, and that is okay because those things are amazing and they're awesome, and I love that you do them, but you've got to be found, and SEO is how you do it. And if you don't get found, like the clock is ticking on the life of your business if you don't get found. That is a little bit of a stronger way to phrase it, but I believe that's so true, and I've seen that time and time and time again. My practical advice is SEO matters so much that you should make your website before you even have a coffee cart. If you're a roaster and you're considering starting a catering branch, or you're a barista considering starting a cart, the step one is to build your website and start with some basic SEO. That comes before you even have your cart, because when you start a new domain or a new page, actually more specifically a new domain, Google sandboxes you a little bit. They don't really show those results for, could be weeks to months. It kind of varies. So step one, before you have your cart, your machine, I know it's not the exciting stuff, build your website, do some SEO on it, hire localize, and that actually comes before. And we do that too. When Goodheart launches in a new city, before we do carts or hiring or baristas or anything, we build that page and we wait, because it does take a little bit of time, and then we start getting going on the equipment. So that's, yeah, I'm super on board, and I just want to highlight and say even a little more strongly the importance of SEO.
I think one, we've been very blessed to not have had a lot of those moments yet. They will come. A couple that stand out the most, I think, is just like the say yes and then figure it out mentality. I think some people are just so scared of the figure it out part. A lot can happen once you get a deposit for an event, right? The figure outable becomes a lot higher, once you actually get that money. But yeah, I mean, we had a day where we had 4 events on one day all happening at the same time, but I didn't even have my 3rd espresso machine yet. We had 3 carts, 2 espresso machines. I was picking up the 3rd one at SCA once it ended. So I was just like, fingers crossed that all of that happens like it's supposed to, because I have committed, and like it was the week after we came back. But then I was able to find another friend of mine locally that does what we do and contracted him out as a part of our team. And he came in and worked the 4th one, and client knew no difference. I gave him our cups, I gave him our syrup, I gave him our coffee. And he was us for the day. So I mean, that was probably like the biggest one that comes to mind. I think not from like a service perspective, just from a like business growth perspective. The biggest thing that I think I struggle with is some of the like imposter syndrome. Like, holy crap, we're actually doing this. Like, we have other baristas that are working with us, and it's how do we not only grow the company, but grow the people that are helping grow the company? I think that's a big one, is just making sure that I'm continuing to learn and grow to become the leader that they need me to be, right? I've always had that layer above me in any of the other jobs. And it's like, okay, now I'm the top of as big as it gets. So how do I make sure that I'm continuing to grow so that the business and people within it can grow too? I would say that's the biggest one that I feel like I navigate constantly. And then just what should I be doing? It's like,
Yeah.
Okay, we don't have any events this week. This is the most important thing that we should be focused on right now? So it's just really understanding the priorities and the growth path and what all that requires of you has been, I think, the biggest battle that we deal with week by week. And I know we'll have bigger stuff that pops up. When I was in real estate, my dad taught me that systems, so if you think about it like running down a straight line, stands for save yourself time, energy, money, and sanity, right? So the systems that you implement in your business are going to be
Banger
so
acronym,
crucial. Yeah. It's going to be so crucial to your success or lack thereof. So, I mean, I think it's definitely helped us. We wouldn't be where we're at now had it have not been for being a part of Flashquotes and just making that booking process. Cause like I said, going back to the hospitality piece, right? Someone being able to submit a quote and get it literally within minutes of them clicking submit, that's just one layer of the puzzle. Because there's, we've done some secret shopping and got emails 2.5, 3 weeks later that are like, oh, sorry, we're booked. And it's like, okay, well, now you are. Were you 3 weeks ago? Maybe not. I don't know. So
I mean, I think the biggest pain is that you can't duplicate yourself, right? You're like, I'm amazing, which if anybody knows me, I'm like, I don't like talking about myself. So I don't go around saying I'm amazing. But you're like, I know my capabilities. If I make a mistake, it's on me. And I have to face myself almost. I can't duplicate myself. I can't be in two places at once. So if we have two events going on at one time, how do I replicate this? So it started with just like hiring some people who I had worked with before per DM. I'm like, you're really great on bar. Your customer service is great. Because it's not about, and I've been interviewing some new hires this week, and I'm like, coffee is the last thing that we do. It's kind of just an add-on. Like, it doesn't even really matter about the coffee. Yes, we're serving that, but we're bringing an experience to our clients. We're giving them a professional service with excellent customer service. And so great that you have great latte art. I'd rather somebody who has amazing customer service skills and interpersonal skills and has like just okay latte art. Anyway, sorry, I got off a little bunny trail. But I think the problem is like you're one person, you can only do what you can do. I was also a mom at the time. My husband works at a hospital, very inflexible hours. And so when he's at work, he's at work. So I think just for me, figuring out, okay, well, how do I grow my business, be a present mom, be an okay wife at least. And that was just finding people I could trust that could duplicate what I do or what I did, because I'm not really going to many events these days. That's how it goes, right? You kind of work yourself out of a job. Well, I still have a job, but I'm doing a lot more. I think one of the main issues is that as an owner, you have the fear of like, this person's going to mess up, and they are. One of my team dropped our $10,000 espresso machine. Like, things like that are going to happen. The other day, I got a text of the bumper of our van. We bumped into the whatever thing that's in the parking lot here. Like, okay, like you just can't. Obviously, if it's a consistent issue, you address it, but things are going to happen, and that's just part of doing business. And so I think being gracious with your team, is super important. So growing the team, I think the biggest pain is like, I can't really afford to hire you full-time or part-time right now, kind of like as you're growing. So
Yeah.
being upfront with people, not saying, come work for me. And then you're like, oh, sorry, I don't have any hours to give you, but being upfront saying like, I'm growing my business. If you can give me, if you're okay with being flexible. And I think that's the good thing about kind of the catering, coffee, restaurant world is people are used to, I might work 5 hours this week and 30 hours the next week. But I think first and foremost, it comes from being like a kind boss and a person that people want to work for, because all of my team is really respectful and they respect me and I respect them.
Yep.
And I literally could not do it without them, because I could have 7 machines and 5 carts and nobody to do the business. Like, you need your staff. So I think while staffing is like one of the biggest hurdles, it's definitely the most important, because you can't grow without your team. And then systems. I recently, like last year, worked on getting our systems on paper and more like fleshed out, but it was just teaching people how I wanted things to be done and having them like, I know you worked at this coffee shop or you learned from this person, but this is how we do it here.
Yeah.
And that it does take time for people to kind of switch, but I think kind of being a broken record and saying like, no, we're going to do it this way. Or one of my team, I love her. She's been with me the longest. But when she first started, I was like, where did you grow up? Because how you are saying these things is just so interesting. And just saying like, hey, can you rephrase when, don't say, like, it's silly, but it's like the guest is already in line. Like, just say, hey, what can I get for you? Or like, what can I get started for you? Instead of like, oh, would you like something? Yes, they would like something. They're already in line. or like passing it off and saying enjoy and not just like here's your drink, kind of honing in on the small details.
I've heard that it's a pattern I've seen amongst like entrepreneurs who build great cultures and great teams. And I've even worked at a couple places that felt like this, where the founder didn't fit into regular kind of corporate life or regular 9-to-5 jobs and just said, man, I just want to make a company that I would be stoked to work at. And then the rest kind of follows from there, right? If you can build that environment, you can attract some amazing people.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, our team's amazing. Like you guys are saying, oh, Creature Coffee has grown a lot. And it's like, it's not down to me anymore. It's down to those guys. It's down to the amazing baristas that we have. And like the management team we've got are just absolutely amazing. Some of them have never managed before and they've worked their way up, from slinging amazing tulips to running the company. So yeah, the team is everything. The culture is everything.
Everyone we've met has been amazing. Shout out to Megan. What
Yeah,
a
we love
badass. Like,
Megan.
how did you find Megan? Like,
She's awesome.
Yeah.
Megan found us. I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, actually, we started roasting and we were co-roasting out of a local roaster here. They had amazing facility, Loring, and we said like, and used to work for them and Medici.
Loring, the huge roaster company.
Big shout out to Medici, or Medici as some people call them in Austin. But yeah, I worked there for a while, knew the owner well, and I said, hey, look, can we use your space? Can we rent your space? Megan was working there at the time, and Megan was originally a customer back of mine. I'd served her a few times back in the day. And so that was the first time we met, but we really connected there and got to know each other there. And one thing led to another, and she ended up being part-time with us, and she grew right the way through us. We went through 3 softwares. I don't know if I'm going to mention the other 2.
Yeah,
You're allowed. It's allowed.
You should. And I'm going to read, I actually this morning was looking at the first emails you and I ever exchanged. So I'm going to read that first one. Please do. Yeah.
But yeah, we were using Honeybook at the time, or I was using Honeybook and wearing all the different hats. And then we went to 17 hats, and then we met the amazing Flashquotes. But we're gonna praise you guys later. But yeah, Megan come on board as a part-time. Her time with the roasting company finished, and she was looking for work. Applied for work for us a few months down the line. And so Megan has literally gone from doing 1 or 2 barista shifts a week. She's a rock star barista as well, by the way, to being like, hey, actually, I need some help with sales. Can you maybe do 4 hours here, 4 hours there, helping out with leads? And so Megan has like literally been all the way up through the company. So she's taken us through Honeybook, 17 hats, all the different procedures. Everyone at the company loves her. She's a badass boss lady for sure. And she's now stepping into our 2 more weeks, and she's be stepping full time into a COO role. So she's
Amazing.
yeah,
Dang.
Well deserved.
Yeah, she's been on. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, I'd be curious for Justin and Michael to speak to this, but there's a lesson there, I think, about like finding someone who can take on more and just continuing to give them more responsibility and more opportunity, and letting them kind of rise up to the occasion and show what they can accomplish, right? And just continuing to do that over and over and over until they're like running the company, right? But that's how you delegate. I don't think it's as easy to go. You can't just go hire a Megan off Indeed, right? And be like, hey, I need a COO for my company. Or you can, but I don't think it would be as good as like what you've done, kind of organically cultivating the talent. So maybe talk about like how you do that.
I think when you're a certain size company, and obviously we're just such a small company as it is right now, it feels huge compared to what we were. But I think when you've got hundreds and hundreds and if not thousands of people, it's you can go out there and pick your people from different companies and so on. But when you're small like us, it's very difficult to attract certain types of people in. And then for them to, we had a lot of people apply to us from coffee. Like, we are not a coffee shop. You can't stand around half the day and chat with your friends and have a good time. This is hard work, And then it's people that are in event catering that know the hard work. They're in the event industry. They don't have any coffee skills. So then you've got this, how do you get someone into this thing? And as you guys know, there's coffee caterers across the US. We're a niche little market. So how do you find someone that's done this job before and bring them in? It's impossible. You can't do it. And then, so we've grown organically on that side of things.
You have these limiting factors, right? Coffee, you might have a limitation on espresso machines or carts, what have you. But can you set up your cart so that you can do custom branding? Can you consider buying a latte art printer? Are there things you can do, custom cups? There's these standard add-ons in the industry, and they're there for a reason, right? Because a lot of corporate companies who tend to have a higher average order value in and of themselves then want those add-ons. And these sorts of things can make a material difference on your top line revenue. Even if you end up doing a very similar number of events, you can really increase your average order value. Or on the other side of things, you can simplify. Go back and listen to our pricing podcasts about different ways to think about pricing, about upselling, about how you bundle things together or unbundle things, because I think that was a super insightful episode. And I think it's worth maybe doing a little bit of housekeeping on your menu and your offerings to see what you can do to either add new items or remove or consolidate things that don't really make sense as add-ons. I think that could be a really good use of time as well.
Maybe explain that phrase, like if that phrase that people haven't heard, pricing out of their own wallet, what does that mean?
Yeah, so that means that like whatever I could afford, whatever I think is affordable for coffee catering is how I price my services, because I assume that everyone else out there thinks the same about money and has the same financial situation as me. Usually this is like a unconscious thing that you just have working in your mind, because when you think about it and say it out loud, you're like, obviously people make different amounts of money and have different purchasing habits and money psychology than I do. But until you kind of make it conscious, you might just think like, oh, well, $300 kind of sounds like a lot to me. That might be a lot for other people. So that's what I'm going to price. So that can be a problem. And the other problem can be that it goes hand in hand, but it's a little bit different. $400 is a lot to me. And so I have this other unconscious assumption that I will always be the one working this event and doing these events, and $400 is enough for me. So that's all I need to charge. That's a mistake, because hopefully your business will grow. Hopefully you can get staff to work these events, and hopefully you can afford to buy more equipment. And to do all of those things, you can't price that way, because you need to be able to afford to pay somebody however much per hour and grow the business and buy more equipment. So yeah, that pricing too low in the $300 to $400 range for coffee catering, or even a lot of, we see bar caterers, we see photo booths start too low. It's usually because they're buying out of their own wallet, and they're not thinking ahead to the additional equipment purchases and staffing that they will eventually need to pay to work these events. So those are two big mistakes.
So this is a topic that I love. I know you do too. Cognitive biases, and how can we be aware of them and optimize our lives and our businesses around at least acknowledging that they're there. So there's a few books I've read on this topic that are great. Influenced by Robert Cialdini is a great one. Predictably Irrational by Dan Ariely is a great one. And some of them talk about some pricing stuff. So I pulled some quick hitting pricing psychology hacks that we can talk about here. The first one is the price quality heuristic. So this is the psychological term for the research that shows people use the price as a mental shortcut to understand the quality. They tend to assume that if the price is high, the quality is good, and if the price is low, the quality is not so good. So it can be counterintuitive for people when they're starting their business. They don't want to overcharge, right? I think probably a common mistake people make is they don't want to lose bookings. They don't want to get told no. They're uncomfortable with having a lower booking percentage. So they lower their prices, or they maybe undervalue themselves out of fear of rejection. But what they don't understand is that high price actually conveys high value and high quality to people in their mindset. So there's an interesting story of a research study on this topic. Researchers gave blinded participants 2 glasses of wine, and they told them that one is a $10 bottle and one is a $100 bottle. And they asked them to sip the wine. They measured them with fMRI, like their brain waves, and then they taste both wines, and then they say, okay, which wine is better? And of course, everyone says the $100 wine is better, right?
Yeah.
The trick is that it was the same wine. So they were actually sipping, or maybe it was same price wine, but they were told a lie about the price. But just knowing that it was an expensive wine, it's not like they were lying or they were tricking themselves. Like the brain waves actually showed that their sensory experience was greater, their pleasure was greater in enjoying the expensive wine. So it's just It's a funny story that illustrates this idea that sometimes people want an expensive luxury experience. A wedding is a great example, right? Sometimes people want to have their dream wedding and to feel like you're a part of that story. So don't be afraid of signaling your high quality by having a reasonably high price.